All right. So interesting news. Anthony Fauci, in an interview on Snapchat, guys, mentioned that it's very possible for this bubble theory possibly to take place, whereby you get an entire league in one city or one site, put the players and the executives, the coaches, and all the key personnel in hotels, have a lot of testing, and potentially get things rolling. And obviously a lot needs to be decided, Alan, but if Anthony Fauci is saying something like that, there has to be some reason now, thankfully, for some optimism, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that he did say was that a sports return is possible without fans. That's
right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most important part here that you have to add, is that you could, and there are some sports that we'll talk about that you can play that has minimal contact, but you know, I mean, obviously some of the ones that we cover, especially the NBA, where they're wearing basically a tank top and shorts, there's a lot of physical contact, skin on skin, a lot of sweat and everything else. And so that's something that they have to figure out. I think the biggest question isn't, can they play in an empty gym or rink? It doesn't have to be an arena because you don't have fans. They could do that. Can you keep every player quarantined? Would they agree to do it? And for how long? Those are the questions that need to be answered, on top of the fact of how are you going to test every single person that you're putting inside this biodome? Look, it's pretty clear that everyone is missing sports, and a return of sports would be good for the morale of the country, but it's also something I think Dr. Fauci has mentioned many times before. It's not something you should rush into. Just
to piggyback off of that, Alan, he also mentioned like how diligent teams would have to be. And yep, as you said, some sports, it's easier than others, but weekly testing, being away from maybe your family for an extended period of time, no one in the stadium, intense surveillance. People are going to have to be fully committed and invested for months in doing this. And then you wonder, not to be negative, but like if someone does test positive, where do you draw the line? Do you eliminate that one person, or do you shut everything down again? So I think that while it's really positive and it's exciting that they're discussing possible scenarios, it's important to also keep in mind that there's going to be a lot of other things that come with this.
And somebody has to be first. And I think the PGA makes the most sense. There's no contact for obvious reasons. You know what I remember about being a hockey player, guys, is that we swap so many germs. If you see anybody that celebrates a goal, the first thing they do is they remove their mouth guard and they give the other guy a high five. Mm-hmm. And then my problem as a goalie was I used to take my water bottle and I'd roll it to the bench right where everybody spits on the ice. Oh, and I remember Mark Stahl saying to me one time, Valley, do you realize that every time you throw the water bottle to the bench for a new one, you are going through everybody's saliva? And I took a step back and thought about that. It's pretty gross.
Well, it's frozen saliva, though, Val. Right? When I played men's league a million years ago, and I remember one time I had my stick upside down. Like, for some reason, I was doing the Snoopy, Charlie Brown thing where the stick is this way. And I'm just kind of holding it, and the guy's like, what are you doing? I'm like, what? He's like, the butt end where your hand goes is right on the ground where everybody's never again.
And then you wipe your face.
I don't know. Like, it was just one of those moments where I'm like, what am I doing? Am I Snoopy holding his thing this way? But he reminded me of that. And like you just said, ever since then, I never forgot. Like, you look down thinking, well, it was also when I played basketball, one of the things we used to do in some of the dusty gyms I played in, because again, Division II, we're used to playing without fans, and also in small gyms, but also dusty gyms. And so sometimes you would lick your finger and then clean the bottom of your sneaker to get more traction. And then it's like, then you lick your finger and do it again. You're like, well, you just the bottom of your shoe when you're licking your fingers. So it's stuff you don't think about when you're an athlete, when you're just playing it in the moment. But a lot of things that we're probably going to have to think about these days.
You're also sharing water bottles.
Michelle, Valley mentioned golf. And it's interesting because Golf Digest reporting that the PGA Tour is going to likely announce that they're going to start playing tournaments again in June, and that first tournament on June 11th will be in Fort Worth, Texas. And Michelle, when you talk about golf, you got the social distancing. They're not going to have fans at the tournament. Each player plays his own ball. You can separate. When you talk about sports that might be ideally suited for social distancing, golf might be top on the list.
Well, I can tell you that my grandpa has every finger and toe crossed right now that happens. Yeah, I think golf makes sense. When we were talking about it earlier today, Alan, I thought, you know what, this is a sport that maybe could be the one that comes back first. And you test with that. I know that they had kind of outlined a few potential tournaments down the road. But I think you start with the first one and see what happens. But of all of them, yeah, if you think about it, the only person that you're really close in contact with is maybe your caddy. So develop a system with the caddy that makes sense, that you're not, touching the same things, or you're disinfecting or whatever you're doing.
Wear gloves.
And I think it bodes well for television. So yeah, I think that is a good solution.
Now, also, I think tennis is another sport. If you think about it, they did obviously cancel Wimbledon. They've pushed up a lot of the other events as well. But, with the U.S. Open at the end of the summer in New York City, you would think maybe by then you could have that event go on, because once again, you're across the court. Now, you're touching a tennis ball that the other participant's touching, but if we're going to have NBA and NHL games where the players are tested, I think you can also test tennis players and golfers as well. So those are sports where you're distant. You want to laugh. NASCAR. I mean, you're in a car by yourself. There's no one. I talk about social distance. The only contact you have is if there's a wreck, unfortunately. So, unless you're in the pit and you're one of the pit crew that has to hustle around the car and take care of business there, I think that's also another event, another sport that you could see making a comeback right now.
Alan, I don't think the players are ever going to be at risk in those sports, but the first day I retired and I came into MSG Network, where we all work, I couldn't believe how many people work there, right? And that's what it's all about. And then you go downstairs at MSG Networks and you see another 50 people, and you're saying to yourself, wow, there's a lot that goes into putting anything on TV. So that's going to be the struggle.
All right, guys, time for a break. Coming up next, Valley and I are going to talk to Rangers president John Davidson. Alan and Michelle will see you for our last segment. But up next, the Rangers president on uncertain times in the game of hockey. And we'll talk to John Davidson when we come back here on the MSG 150 at Home right after this.